Hi, Year 10, Mr. Tapley here to walk you through the Semester 2 CAT, Human Wellbeing, Area Study 1 for Year 10, Health, Wealth, Disease, and Disaster. So in this video, similar to the video I did for the dev task, I will be going through the instructions, the rubric, taking you through step by step in how to complete this assessment during remote learning. So I apologize if it's a bit long in advance, I apologize. We're just trying to give you as much detail, as much support as possible to help you complete each section step by step and to navigate the digital tools that we will be using to complete this CAT remotely. So our focus for this assessment is human wellbeing variances in Africa. So in the dev task, we were looking at human wellbeing in our backyard. So we did a local scale, so looking at Melbourne and Victoria. We're going global now. So we're looking at the entire continent of Africa and looking at the variances or the differences in human wellbeing across the continent, so in each of the different nations. Essentially the same structure as the dev task. So you're creating a map, looking at some graphs, and then we have an extra component to the CAT that we didn't have in the dev, which is a little bit of a extended response component, but I'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. Before even starting the CAT, I recommend you go back and you have a look at your dev feedback. Again, similar structure, we've done that deliberately. The dev is supposed to develop your skills and your knowledge. It's essentially a rough draft, a practice version of the CAT. So go back and check what you did well, what you can improve on before starting the CAT so you don't make the same mistakes as last time. In terms of, I can speak for every student, but in terms of some general improvement strategies, the PQE summaries, which is again what we're using to interpret the data in these maps and graphs, make sure they are specific and make sure they are detailed. So don't say human well-being big high in top part of color map. Say north, say Botswana, say Zimbabwe. So use specific names and numbers. That's the best advice I can give you for your PQE summaries is names and numbers. So be specific. The other thing I'd say about the PQE summaries is the next step to expand your analysis, I suppose, of this data, instead of finishing with describing the map and saying, PQE exception, add an extra letter to that paragraph. So PQE, and then the final letter I want you to think about is Y, or the word Y, basically. Instead of describing the data, the final sentence of your PQE, after you finish your exception, add an extra sentence or two where you explain, where you analyze why the well-being variances have occurred, or why that pattern of human well-being exists, or why there is a correlation, a connection between GDP and life expectancy. So it's all about explaining the data as opposed to just pointing at it and saying, look over there, there's human well-being. So explain why that has occurred. We've done a lot of work on different human well-being factors, how those factors are connected to each other. So explain a possible reason, a possible cause of those variances. So before you start your CAT, again, look at the dev, the end. I'll get into the actual instructions for the CAT now. So part one is creating a human wellbeing map. So similar to the dev, again, we're creating a choropleth map, a nice and colorful choropleth map of human wellbeing in Africa. You're using this website here, mapchart.net, which looks something like this. To create that map. Before you even start that though, what you need to do is use this file here. So human wellbeing HDI data. I should say that all of the files I'm showing you today, so the instructions, which we were just looking at, this data, and then the rubric, all three of those are attached to the assessment, either in Google Classroom, so you've got 1, 2, 3 down there, or in Compass. So it's all located in the one place. You shouldn't get lost trying to find this information. But what you're going to want to do with this file here, before we start creating our map, we need to put this HDI data for each of these countries in order, in correct order from high to low. So what you're going to want to do, it's a bit different from Microsoft Excel, very similar though. There should be a tutorial on how to do that. But again, if you have any questions, please let us know. But if you're using Google Sheets, what you're going to want to do is you're going to highlight the names of these countries in Africa and their HDI ranking. Scroll on down. We've got 15 nifty nations in Africa. So make sure you're just highlighting the names and the data. What you're going to do now, data, sort range. Now we want to put these countries in order of their HDI. If I go column A, that's going to rank them, A to Z. So it's going to be Zimbabwe at the bottom, Angola at the top. What I want to do is sort these by column B. So that's going to rank them now on their HDI data. And I'm going to go Z to A, so put them in descending order. And if you look at the now, you can see we've got low HDI countries on the bottom: Niger, Central African Republic, or CAR is their fun acronym. And if I scroll back up, the winner of the HDI race in Africa 2019 is Mauritius, so 0.804. So now I've got my countries in the correct order. I'll be able to plot them correctly on a map. Quick side note as well, when you're creating your legend, similar to what you did with the quintiles, when you're creating your cipher map for the dev, you're going to want to put these countries in groupings. So there's not going to be 50 different country colors on the map. We don't want a rainbow map. You only use 2 or 3 colors, 2 or 3 shades, and then you'll just go dark blue, darkest blue, darker blue. So what I would recommend you do is you use these HDI classification rankings to sort your countries. So use one color for very high, use one color for high, use one color for medium, low, etc. So that'll help you group those up nicely. So I've got my data. Next step is using this map chart website to then plot that on the map. I'm going to move my giant head out of the way. Be gone, Mr. Tepley. So you're going to come up with this website here. It looks a bit confusing, but it is fairly straightforward. Clicking on this allows me to change the color of the country that I'm about to click on. Unless you have a photographic memory, I recommend you click on Show Country Names. That might make things a bit easier for you. And what I'm going to do is go through my list, and then I'm just going to put in the countries according to their HDI ranking. So let's see if I can find one of these countries on my map. So Egypt is 0.7, so that's going to be a high. So if I go back to map chart, let's find Egypt. Let's say for 0.7, instead of using this dark red, I'm going to go for a nice orange. I'll click on Egypt. And that's now, let's say, let's throw in Congo. These are not correct numbers. Please do not copy me. I'm just expressing my creativity. All right, so now essentially that's what it's going to be. A bit fancier than mine. So I've got my colors for those HDI rankings. Got the names, I've got borders. You'll see down here, step 2, I can now add a title to my map legend. So what are we measuring using this legend? It's HDI 2019. What does that specific color mean? That might be 0.7 to 0.8. Again, don't copy me there, I'm just using this as an example. So that's going to come up now in the bottom here, my little legend. And then all you'll need to do is, if you click on Preview Map, once you're finished, you'll see it's got this nice little border around my map. And you can either right-click on it and just go Save Image As. You can take a screenshot, or you can go Download Map, and that'll download your image for that map. Then you're done. All you need to do now is take that map, and you can either attach it to the assessment file, or you can move my face back into reality. Woohoo, there I am. You can either attach that to the assessment file submission, or you'll notice that in this cat file, we've left you space down here to pop in your map. So just Control-C, Control-V, and then we've left space for your map PQE. So before you start writing out your map PQE, it's important that you add bolts to your map. So the map chart website's pretty nifty. It's good. It gives you your legend, gives you the map itself, but you need to double check that you have a border, you have orientation, legend, title, scale, and source. So source will just be not map chart, but Human Development Index. That's where you're getting your data from. So make sure that before you start writing your map PQE, you bolt your map. Once you have done that, you can go down to the space provided in this file and then just write out your map PQE. So pattern, quantify, exception. And for those of you that need a refresher on PQE, again, check your dev feedback, make sure it's nice and detailed. But pattern, where is human well-being going in this map? So is it up in the north? Is it up in the south? Is there a pattern at all that exists? Is it up near the coast? So look for some sort of pattern where you can see a lot of this color over here, not a lot of this color over there. Quantities, so you're looking for numbers, examples. So for example, blank country has a high or low HDI, and then this country has a high or low HDI. Then E for exception, find something that doesn't fit your pattern. So look onto your map and see a country that's not in the right place. So a country that has a very dark red color when all the countries around it have very light red, something like that. Then I'll just take my little PQE summary and I'll put it back right in here. That's part one. I do apologize if I am rambling. I'm trying my best to keep it nice and short and sweet. The other thing I would say about the cat is that it is 3 parts. So part 1's your map. Part 2, you're looking at some graphs similar to the dev task, and part 3 is extended response. In terms of the assessment due date, you'll probably be given about 1 week. So that's 4 to 5 lessons maybe, depending on how much your teacher likes you. What I recommend is setting yourself really achievable and clear goals for each lesson. So let's say I try and do my map in 1 lesson, take a deep breath, go to bed. Then I'll do part 2 in 1 lesson, bedtime. Part 3 in 1 lesson, and then I've got 1 or 2 lessons at the end where I can revise, where I can edit, where I can add to it. Some of you might find the graphs harder or easier than the map, so you might spend more time on that. But set yourself a goal of about 1 lesson per section. Anyway, so speaking of sections, part 2, we are looking at some graphs now. So we've mapped human well-being. Now we're going to graph well-being indicators using the Gapminder tool, which we have used in class before. So hopefully that's less scary looking than map chart. But Gapminder looks something like this. Still looks a bit confusing now, but I will again explain how to use this. But what you are doing with Gapminder, we're going to make 3 little graphs. And again, the website does all the work for you. All you have to do is screenshot it, copy and paste it into your cat file. Again, just like with the map, we've left space down below. So graph 1, put your picture there, graph 1, PQE, then. And the 3 things that you are graphing are life expectancy versus income, 2015. Make sure you've got the right year. Extreme poverty versus child mortality. So is there a connection or a correlation, some sort of relationship between families who are living under the poverty line and then child mortality? And then finally, babies per women, total fertility versus female literacy. So what you're going to do is get those 3 graphs, chuck them into your assessment file, and then again, short PQE paragraph using that template that we've used before. You've done 100 times. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. What you're looking for again at the end of your PQE is a nice little analysis or evaluation statement. So pattern, quantity, exception, and then in conclusion, there is a correlation, there is a relationship, there is a connection between these 2. Or in conclusion, these 2 are not related at all, because my graph does not look like a graph. If I was to use this one as an example, you can see there is a clear correlation, a clear relationship between income and HDI, because as this goes up, as my HDI goes up, my income also goes up. That's why I've got a nice line here. Basically, a good rule of thinking about it is if you can draw a line through the middle and everything's relatively close to that line, the line of best fit, then that means that they are related. So definitely these 2 things are related. Now, in our actual graph that we are smushing into our cat file, we're only looking at Africa. What I will now show you how to do is to navigate the scary world of Gapminder. So this isn't one of the graphs that you're using. This is income versus HDI, but it's the same thing. And to change what you are measuring, all you need to do is click on HDI, and you can see I can go into education, and I can look at literacy, or I can look at population. So all the well-being indicators are in there. But for the sake of this example, I'm measuring HDI versus income. What I'm going to do, so let's move my giant face out of there once again. The first thing I want to do is click on Africa, because that is what we are measuring. So Africa, and I'm going to select everything in that group. Looks a bit confusing. It gets better. Now I'm going to click on Africa again, and I'm going to remove everything from that group. There we go. Still a bit confusing. So what I'm going to do now is click on Settings. And the main thing that's bugging me are these labels. So what you want to do with the labels, remove the boxes, because that's taking up a bit of space on my graph. I'm going to make this a smaller number. Let's go for number 10. 10. And now I've got a slightly more legible graph. And if I go, okay, I go expand, full screen. Now it's a bit easier for me to read. So I can screenshot this image and then put that into my cat file. And then again, all I need to do, create myself a nice little PQE paragraph for each of those 3 graphs there. Similar to your map, before you start writing away, make sure that your graph has all the correct graphing conventions. So for maps, we use bolts. For graphs, we use salts. So scale, axes, labels, title, and source. So make sure that your graph has all the correct details. The source for this would be found on this website here. Final section. See if I can get this under 20 minutes. I'm not optimistic, but we'll try. The final section. This is what we didn't have in the dev, so it's important you listen carefully for this one. This is really what will allow students to, I guess, differentiate between an average assessment and a really high quality one. This is where you flex your muscles a bit and you show us how well you understand this topic and how well you can interpret the data as opposed to just describing it. You're analyzing it. So we've given you a statement about human well-being in Africa, human well-being levels. According to this statement, Africa is a region of disadvantage with low levels of human well-being. To what extent is this statement accurate? So you are responding to that statement in this extended response section. So in 2 or 3 paragraphs, you need to start off with 1, my contention. So in my opinion, this statement is completely wrong. In my opinion, this statement is completely right. Or to what extent is this accurate? It's kind of accurate. There's some disadvantage, there's some not disadvantage. So I've got my contention, I've got my opinion. Next step is to prove it. So if you say that Africa has lots and lots of human well-being levels, some high, some low, I'm going to ask you to prove it. And how you do that is by 1, referencing the section 1 and 2 data. So use the specific data that we've given you. It's like when the test gives you the answer to a question, the question before. Half of that information is going to be in your map and your graph. So you can use the HEI data from the map to answer your extended response question. You can use the life expectancy income data from your graphs to answer this question here. So reference the data in those maps and graphs to support your response. You should also be doing a little bit of research though. So this section should be 2 or 3 paragraphs. Reference the section 1 and 2 data and explain the cause of well-being variances in African nations. Now, if you go to the rubric, specifically what we're asking for, 2 well-being factors. So you need to talk about 2 factors that are affecting well-being variances in Africa. So there's a lot of things that impact well-being. Talk about 2 of the well-being factors we've looked at in this unit to explain why there is a different level of well-being in some countries. So maybe some countries have different levels of education or literacy or access to water, or if you want to use 2 African nations as a case study, as an example, because you're not just referencing the data, you're referencing specific names. So again, numbers and names. So referencing specific nations like the DRC, which we've looked at in a lot of detail. So you could talk about the impact of conflict and war on human well-being. If you want to talk about Rwanda, you could talk about how the Rwanda genocide impacts their human well-being levels currently. So, 3 parts. I apologize again if it's a bit long. Map, graph, extended response. And again, really good quality responses will be 3 paragraphs. So you might go paragraph 1, here's my opinion. Paragraph 2, here's the data from section 1 and 2. So my maps and graphs support my opinion. Paragraph 3, here's some external research that I've done on these 2 African nations and these 2 well-being factors, or you could look at 2 specific well-being factors across a lot of different nations, so education levels in some high well-being countries and in some low well-being countries in Africa. A tip and trick as well for this section, to find some of that research data, I highly recommend this website which we've used before. So the HDR, Human Development Reports provided by the United Nations. If you go to country profiles, they give you a big list of all the countries they have data for. And if I click on Ghana, for example, it gives me their HDI ranking once my internet loads. And if I scroll down, it gives me all these different well-being factors that I can use as evidence in that final section. So that's everything for the Semester 2 CAT, Area Study 1 Human Wellbeing. Again, we've given you space below to write out all this information. You are welcome to create your own assessment file. The only reason we've put this all in one place, so that's easier for you guys just to not lose track of things, and you can keep referring back to the instructions and not have to open and close 100 different tabs like I'm trying to do. All the information, again, is going to be in Compass or Google Classroom. In terms of your rubric, you can see that we've tried to map these out, if you'll pardon the geography pun, to the different sections in the CAT. So section 1, map, bolt, also relating to map, PQE. So that's all section 1 related. And I'm going to get as many marks as possible here. So 3 full marks here. If my map is accurate, if it has correct shading, and if it's easy to read, so I don't have a rainbow map of 50 different colors. So you're getting assessed on the actual map itself. Do you have bolts? And then your PQE summary paragraph. These are my section 2 ones. So I've got the actual graphs itself. Do I have the graphs? Do those graphs have salts? And then my graph PQE. And then finally, section 3 is down here. So my extended response. Have I referenced section 1 and 2? That's that first criterion here. Do I have a clear contention? So have I responded to the statement? And then finally down here, these are your well-being factors. So have I talked about 2 distinct well-being factors? Have I referenced a bit of research on different countries to show education in, let's see if it's loaded by now. Damn you, internet. But I could show education in Ghana, and then I could go to Madagascar, and then I could go to Mali. So I could just show education level as one of my well-being factors and how that connects to their HDI ranking. All right. I think I've said everything I want to, guys. Any questions or concerns, please let us know.